Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'm going to be doing my usual review of the PMQs questions from Starmer and Blackford, but in most unusual circumstances. I think it's probably fair to say I've never anticipated a Prime Minister's questions quite as much as this one. I got very little done yesterday anticipating this, trying to keep up with everything. This was going to be big. The impact, not necessarily immediately, but we're not talking about something that would trigger the end of Boris Johnson, say, this week or even next week. It's always a case with these things, will it be the thing that eventually makes him fall? Which maybe, say, next spring or something like that. Does it start the clock on his time as PM? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So apologies potentially for keep talking about what is at the end of the day a party, or actually a series of party. It's a party that potentially made worse the most serious healthcare crisis of our lives, and certainly one that undermined the messages. But this scandal represents nothing less than potentially the trigger that brings down a government. We can only see that with hindsight. And it has been taken seriously. Like, you only had to look at the newspaper headlines from yesterday. You look at the Metro, outrage at the lies and the parties. Daily Mail, outrage at the lies and the parties. Guardian, outrage at the lies and the parties. The Mirror, outrage at the lies and the parties. Financial Times, outrage at the lies and the parties. Outrage at the lies and the parties from left-wing papers, right-wing papers. It's across the board. But not all the papers. Because then we look at the Boris fan club papers. The Telegraph. Look, here's a picture of the Queen cutting a cake. The Times. Look, the Cabinet are arguing about COVID passports. The Express. So there may have been a party, but what we should really do is get vaccinated, you know. The Sun. Oh, it's a bit windy. You know, and as PMQs was starting, you looked at that. Lots of muttering from the benches on both sides of the House. There was a debate just before there's always a debate of some kind just before PMQs. This time it was on Northern Ireland, particularly the Northern Ireland Protocol. And, you know, it came to a close in anticipation of PMQs. The last 5 minutes, I could hardly hear. The MPs asking questions and the minister responding to them were having to raise their voices. It could hardly be heard because of the murmuring, the loud murmuring of hundreds of people on both sides of the House. I heard someone saying that a lot of Tory MPs would be staying away. Not a bit of it. The benches looked packed to me. Tory MPs know that this is wrong. They know it looks wrong. More importantly, they know it looks wrong. But they obviously think they need to somehow double down here and brazen it out. Boris Johnson, before even any questions were asked, had sought to deflect anything. He made a statement on the leaked video last night. He claimed that he was furious to see the clip and apologised for the offence that it may have caused. He said that he has been repeatedly assured that there was no party and that no COVID rules were broken. But he has asked the Cabinet Secretary to establish all the facts. In other words, carry out an investigation. Now, let's just stop that there before I go on to that bit. The Prime Minister has said in Parliament that if it turns out there was I've been assured there wasn't a party, but if it turns out there was a party, I had no idea about it. This party, let us remember, was held in his home. In fact, it's not just one party, but several. But here's the thing. The Cabinet Secretary, by the way, I saw reports later on, Downing Street refused to say whether the Cabinet Secretary was even at this party that didn't happen. And so the person investigating it may well have been at the party. And the other thing to bear in mind is they're only going to investigate one party, not all three of them, just one. The one that Boris Johnson did not attend. Because one of the parties was allegedly held in the flat of number 10. So not just in the building that Boris Johnson was in, but actually where he would have been. You know, and that's the thing. Even if Boris Johnson didn't attend all of the parties, or even any of them, although we are told he attended one, he was in the same building. This then was the tactic of dodging any questions on the matter, basically kicking the can down the road to give himself a few more hours of respite. He can just say, there's going to be an investigation. You can ask me what you like, but there's going to be an investigation. And that's it. That's his line. So Starmer, wasn't going to be deflected. He accused the government of lying to the people about there being no party. And then he said to Boris Johnson, he says, they're right, aren't they? Johnson predictably just repeated his line that he was furious with the Tory. He can quite understand how people would be put out. He was as well, and that he's asked for an investigation. Starmer asked another one then. I think his third question it may have been. He went into teacher mode. I had to smile. Went into teacher mode. So he was given an example of someone, one of many, who had followed the rules and lost her mother without being able to see her. And she wants to know why the government allowed a Downing Street party but didn't allow her to see her dying mother. Now, as he was talking, there was some murmuring on the government benches. And he stopped and he said to them, you should listen to this. And then he began talking. They said, are you listening? Classic teacher mode. Johnson then tried to say what the public want. He tried to accuse Labour of playing party politics. He said, the public don't want to focus on something a year ago. What, you mean that's something that never happened? Is that what you mean? There's something that never happened, but you're still going to have an investigation about. Okay. But it's not just a year ago. We're in a serious situation with COVID right now. And the issue is, and this is the link, that Boris Johnson either deliberately or accidentally is failing to understand. The message is being undermined. Yesterday the government also announced what they were going to do about the rise of Omicron. And we're talking about that later, not in this video. They're undermining their own message. Johnson kept trying to say, we need to focus on now. But Starmer made the point, how are we doing that then? There were no ministers addressing the nation today. You say we're in a situation now. How come no ministers were telling the nation what to do? He also recounted how the Queen sat alone at her late husband's service. She followed the rules even at her husband's funeral service. No one around her. Johnson tried to pull the party politics line again, said that Starmer was at fault for trying to undermine the COVID messages, and said the public have not been fooled. I hope the public haven't been fooled. Starmer said this is so desperate, even his own party know it. Last week he said there was no party, but now he thinks it needs an inquiry. He also noted that the Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, thinks that the police don't investigate events from a year ago. And he said he worked in the Crown Prosecution Service and he can say it's absolute nonsense. He said that the Met were investigating other parties from the same time. And they are. He called on the government to pass all information to the Met Police. Johnson said he would. He had to, didn't he? Now, this is where it's going to get interesting. Maybe. Because think this through. Someone has sat on this information for a full year. This party took place nearly a year ago. Now, there's various reasons why you might not have revealed it at the time. But let's speculate that they wanted to wait until Johnson was vulnerable. He wasn't that vulnerable this time last year because Brexit was keeping him in place. He wasn't that vulnerable for most of this year, the vaccine boost and all the rest of it. Now he's vulnerable. So they've waited for this time, let's say. They've waited until the scandal could have the greatest impact. Then they leak the story to the Mirror with enough corroborating evidence for them to be confident of running the story. And they ran it very hard last week. 3 separate days front page. Then Johnson denies that there was a party. So then a video is leaked which shows Downing Street staff joking about it and working out how to get around any questions about it. And it's leaked at such a time that it will give Boris Johnson the least amount of time to cook something up for the Prime Minister's questions. They leak it basically on the day before PMQs. So it's shown on the evening before PMQs. Can't deny there was a party now. I mean, Johnson's still trying to, but he switches from an outright denial to saying that he has been assured that there was no party. So now he's trying to claim that if there was a party, which he's still assured there wasn't, that he must have been lied to, just like the public. But whoever sat on this evidence, why would we think they've released everything already? They've been tactical already. They've been strategic. Boris Johnson has said in Parliament that he knows nothing about these parties. He's said it clearly now over 2 separate weeks. Now, let's say this person or persons who are leaking this information has, say, video footage of Boris Johnson at one of these parties. What if it's clear from the footage that it was a Downing Street party from last year? It's really clear. You can't claim it was some other event. There will then be video proof that Johnson has misled Parliament on a matter that the public are paying close attention to. Now, I'm not saying such evidence does exist. It may not. I will not be, I'll not be surprised, however, if a further revelation of some kind is not planned for the next week. Prominent backbench Tory MP Sir Roger Gale said that if Johnson misled Parliament, then they would have no choice but to tell the Prime Minister his time is up. Now, in reality, it has been proven that he has misled Parliament no end of times. I suspect what Sir Roger means is that if it's proven that he's misled Parliament on a matter that the public are paying attention to, then they will have to make him resign. So then after Starmer's questions, it was Blackford's turn to make his point about this latest scandal. He raised the rapid rate of rise with Omicron right now. Trust in leadership is a matter of life and death, he said. Downing Street willfully broke the rules and laughed about it. The Prime Minister is responsible for losing the trust of the people and can no longer lead and should resign. And he said, when can we expect that resignation? Obviously, Johnson accused Blackford now of playing party politics. Blackford then remade the point about the public following the rules and the sacrifices they made, while the government had laughed at us. He said the Prime Minister has lost the public and his own benches. He said this is a moment of moral reckoning. Every Tory MP must now decide if this man is to lead us where lives are at stake. And Tory MPs were trying to drown him out. In fact, during the proceedings, the Speaker had to tell members of both sides of the House to calm down. It was very animated. Blackford continued, I've nothing left to say to a man we cannot trust. It's time for members of this House to act, and if he doesn't resign, he must be removed. Of course, Johnson just blathered on about getting on with the job. But as much as Johnson will want it to, this isn't going to go away. Neither Starmer nor Blackford had to focus entirely on this topic. There were other things they could have fired at Johnson. If it weren't for this scandal, there would have been plenty to go out. Like it's just emerged, for example, that he was personally involved. He denied it, but a letter has emerged that shows that Boris Johnson was personally involved in prioritising the evacuation of animals over people who'd been threatened with murder during the fall of Kabul. It's just one thing they could have gone with. They focused on this, entirely on this, because it is chiming with the public. When both Labour and the SNP focus on the same line, I've said it before, it is because it is a clear vulnerability on the part of the government. Johnson accused them both of playing party politics. And indeed, sure, this is part of a political game. But that's better than playing Christmas party games, isn't it? With dozens of guests in a small room during lockdown, isn't it, Prime Minister? Now, final point, because people are saying, oh, how come the SNP are calling for Johnson's resignation, but Starmer is only calling for an apology? Why is he going so soft? He's not going soft. I've explained the logic on this before, but I'll do it again. Going soft would be calling for his resignation. I did talk about this same logic in last week, I think it was, with the recent motion by Blackford. But just to reiterate, it would be politically naive for Starmer to call for Johnson's resignation. Because unlike when other MPs do it, Starmer has the power to put it to a debate, a full debate and vote. If Starmer does it, it will be a full blood and guts debate. Everyone will be involved. It will rally every single Tory MP around their leader. Any other MP says that the Prime Minister should resign, and that's all it is. It's a statement. It may or may not be reported. Depends on who says it. If the leader of the opposition does it, they have to back it up with a full vote of no confidence in the government. Not the opposition day motion that Blackford triggered last week, where both front benches are expected to butt out. A full meeting of Parliament is triggered. Boris Johnson will be there. At his back, hundreds of MPs that would have to... Basically, it would give him more time. Now, I don't know how much longer Conservative MPs are going to give him to sort himself out, but I want it to be as brief a window as possible so that the opposition have more time to work on his successor before an election that may well take place in the next 18 months. Starmer calling for his resignation would be counterproductive to that aim. We want Tory MPs to be pissed off at Johnson, not singing his praises, and then trooping out for every single one of them to vote to say that they have, and put on record that they have the utmost confidence in his leadership of the government, because that delays any vote against him. And it might seem odd, but this is the political game. Even if Starmer secretly wants Johnson to remain for strategic purposes, it will also stop a lot of the debate over government wrongdoing, because the confidence vote will suddenly take centre stage. So, or everything else will be knocked off the headlines. Starmer will have brought in a dead cat to help Johnson out. Frankly, there's enough people who claim to be anti-Tory, who are helping the Tories out. We don't really need others to do it as well. But those are my thoughts on what will turn out to be a PMQs that will live long in the memory if there is any more damaging proof to emerge, and especially if it has an impact in North Shropshire for next week's by-election. I mean, wouldn't surprise me if anyone is holding on to a third bit of damning evidence if it is not withheld until next week. But we'll see. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.